All right, so welcome to our webinar on phases of training. I have with me my friend Daniel Harlow from Boston. Daniel, you want to give a little snippet to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Nikki. This is fantastic. I'm glad we were able to put this together, and kudos to you for taking the initiative and throwing this whole presentation together. I'm Daniel. I live in the United States, Boston, Massachusetts, nice New England area right now. And I've been in the fitness and nutrition industry for the better part of I want to say going on 17 years, not to totally date myself now. But I'm just completely obsessed and passionate about it. And I started off as a full-time personal trainer kind of in college. And then after college, continued that industry, was really finding that a lot of people had nutrition related questions that I just wasn't an expert enough in at the time in order to facilitate, but I definitely knew it was a big portion of any type of goal you're looking to hit. Training is absolutely necessary, but nutrition is a big piece of the puzzle too. So I decided to become a nutrition specialist so that I could best help anyone, clients, friends, family, whoever, get and achieve the best results possible by having both fitness and nutrition components. And then I just kind of made that my main focus. I never really shifted away from training completely, but definitely had an eye on the nutrition component and just all the fundamentals. It's quite a big bubble of information that you can learn, and the more you learn, the more obsessed I become about it. So it's kind of where I ended up today. And I've owned my own small studio. I've done online stuff, and then Nikki and I are just so like-minded. So here we are today presenting to you guys, and I just love empowering others with knowledge so that whatever they're looking to achieve, whatever goal they have, we can deliver that knowledge to make that possible for you guys.
Thanks so much. And thank you everybody that came out. Like we said, this is going to be recorded so everyone can have access to it later, and we'll post it up so people can access it whenever they want. But we'll dive in a little bit. So I'm going to start that screen share. Okay. Can you see okay? We're good?
I can see it.
Perfect. All right, so that's lovely pictures of us getting started. So there we go. So first of all, there's a lot of different phases. We're kind of covering the basics today. We're going to go a little bit in what I like to say in order, because there is some things that you have to kind of not necessarily master, but become quite confident with before you move on to the next stage. So of course, there's that foundation phase, really getting the basics, making sure, everything's ready to go for any of the other phases. Your build phase, conditioning, or cut phase. I always careful how I say that one, because not everybody's looking to necessarily tone or cut. Sometimes it's just conditioning, so more or less that cardiorespiratory aspect, and strength and power, which are often interchangeable depending on your goals, of course. So starting off with that foundation phase, often it can be anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks. That really depends on the individual. If you have an athletic background and you're kind of starting training more specific, you likely only need something like 4 weeks to kind of hone in on the smaller skills that you might need in terms of the training. And if you're brand new and you just haven't really started making those motor patterns yet, you might need a little bit more time. So, learning the proper body mechanics, like I say there, form, technique, being able to activate the right muscles. You'll often notice more isolation exercises. So that's where it's coming into activating the right muscles. Core stability training, that is really going to be keeping you safe throughout a lot of the other phases. So all of these things you really have to hone in on and kind of master these things before you dive into any other phases, because that's where it's going to become more of a hazard. You're more likely to hurt yourself and really just not get the most out of the training that you're doing. If you're not activating the right muscles, you're not really going to get much out of that exercise. The big thing I really notice is, the glutes or lower traps, like the upper back area, when people are doing pull exercises and when people are doing squats, they might not activate those muscles. And it just takes a little bit more training and specific work to get them activated. And then you're just going to get more out of those squats. You can build the glutes and have stronger squats when you get those glutes activating. So that's kind of more on the training aspect. Daniel, did you want to chime in or add anything to that?
Sure. I mean, everything you said is 100% true. I want to remind everyone out there that I even do the foundation step, whenever I'm doing something new, because no matter how experienced you are, if you're going from, this is brand new to you, the foundational steps are critical. Getting a good balance to your body, making sure that you don't I know, like, if I go a couple of days, like, kind of out of my rhythm, I'm like so excited to like jump back into it. Yes, you heard me say so excited to jump back into it. But no matter how excited or not excited you are, the foundation is critical, because you don't want to have any setbacks. Always keep in mind, your body, even no matter how excited or not excited you are, is looking for the same rhythm. And so start slow, foundational steps, and then build your way up to that, because you're less likely to suffer from injury or go 0 to 100 and kind of crash or get unmotivated. So that piece right there, just the founding steps, I always say going back to the basics is sometimes where you need to have your mindset at in order to get to where you want to be. So no matter how experienced you are, or if you're just starting, and we're all kind of in the same boat with those steps.
Absolutely. And I love when you say kind of going back to it, that brings up another point is this is actually really important after injuries too. Rehabilitating, but making sure, I broke my leg and I needed to basically work on mobility and stability all over again as if it was brand new, because everything was just not good after the surgery. So it's rebuilding the muscles, rebuilding that stability. No matter what the injury is, you really have to start from the basics and rebuild before you get back into your training. So I like how you said that too.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of cycling through, you always want to come back to that foundation phase and we always say back to basics, making sure everything's good and form is good so you can continue to progress.
It's kind of like picturing, like, when you first wake up in the morning, like when you first get out of bed, do you want to like start sprinting? Not really. Your body needs to warm up and wake up first. And that's kind of what I related a lot to too.
100%. Get that coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nutrition foundation phase is really just starting to learn. And when I am training clients, I'm sure Daniel, it's the same for you when it comes to nutrition coaching, is teaching your clients how to eat better for their body and their goals. And that changes between everybody. Oftentimes it starts with a couple of these things you see. So portion control. I think in general, just the culture and restaurants and people are brought up differently, that portion sizes are totally off in most places.
United States guilty.
Yeah, I've been to a buffet down there.
Yep.
Learning the different macronutrients. So when people hear proteins, carbs, fats, the amount of time my clients have no idea what foods fall into what categories. And then, of course, learning what they do for the body. That really helps people be able to make their own choices and like educated decisions when making meals for themselves. So they're not, hindering the results, and they're able to get there a lot faster. And then the other big thing I really, you'll always hear me, all of my clients know this, tracking food and drink. So everything you're putting in your mouth, you need to be tracking. And 9 times out of 10, that's a big discovery moment for a lot of people, that they just don't realize how much they're taking in of certain things. Or like, people are getting coffees or different types of lattes or whatever from Starbucks. Like, those things are loaded with sugar and like things that you don't necessarily need. So it's a big eye opener for a lot of people when they start to track everything. But I think those are kind of the main things when people are starting with nutrition and learning is the portion control, the different macronutrients and what they do for that person, and of course tracking everything. Daniel, did you want to add anything to that?
Oh, you hit the nail on the head with tracking. I always had, like, the very first thing when I'm having someone start a program or when someone is asking me questions just in general, I always say, like, 100% of the time, start like a journal, like start tracking your stuff. It is amazing what you will find out because everyone has their routine, right? A day-to-day routine, more or less. And so in their mind, like, yeah, they're getting what they need. So they're always confused, like, why am I not getting results? What should I change? What can I do differently? I'm like completely lost with this because I have a routine. But when you start actually tracking it, you'll find out how many gaps you actually have, like water intake, especially. Like, some people are like, I really discovered that I just don't drink water. I don't even know how I'm hydrated right now. And like, I know everyone drinks their morning coffee, or most people do, but that is, coffee actually dehydrates you, and it's good for some other things, but you should follow that up with water in the morning as well. And then keep that going throughout the day. But you'll find out, how much you're actually eating. A ton of people, no matter who you are, fitness and not fitness related, are really, really protein deficient. I myself found that out about myself many years ago, and it was kind of a complete shocker because I'm like, I got this. I'm eating protein. I'm aware of protein. But again, helping you track will really, kind of, it really shines a light. It's kind of like spotlights where those gaps are. And protein, water are the biggest offenders right there. Even if you're getting protein in your diet, you're probably don't, I'm not saying you actually are, but you're probably protein deficient, especially with the amount of training that you're doing or you're looking to do. So when you start to, incorporate activity into your regimen, tracking is going to be 100% vital to that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love that you said that with the protein because I mean, my fitness pal is notorious for this. I always tell my clients, I'm like, don't even look at the goals that they're giving you. These are the goals I'm giving you.
Yeah.
So 100%. Awesome. So that's the foundation phase, a little snippet. Next, usually a build phase comes after the foundation phase because this is where a lot of people misunderstand this phase where they think, oh, this is where people are gonna get like jacked and like, that whole bodybuilder mentality. And I'm like, absolutely not. Especially females are like, I don't want to get big and bulky. And I'm like, I promise you that won't happen unless you
Hear that
absolutely try very
100% of
hard
the
to
time.
do that. Yeah. So the biggest thing I always hear is that, but building muscle. Muscle is your lean, active tissue. So when you're sitting doing nothing, it's burning calories for you. And it's going to make you stronger to be able to do things and be more functional. So building muscle isn't becoming jacked and huge, it's becoming strong and functional for longer to improve your quality of life. And for all of those people out there who are trying to lose weight, this is so important. So when people are like, I want to lose fat first and then build muscle, I always go, actually, it's kind of the opposite. This is going to help you burn fat. It's misleading. And I think people misunderstand this phase. So that's my first little thing on it. 8 weeks. The reason 8 weeks is usually the sweet spot is because it takes 4 to 8 weeks to even start to build muscle. So 8 weeks is good because you can continue a little bit longer if this is your main focus. But again, as we'll switch through the phases, I'll explain a little more, but we want to continue to change the phases because our body constantly adapts. So if you stay in a phase for too long, you're going to stop seeing results, and that's when people plateau. So getting into the training aspect, this is where there's going to be a blend of compound movements as well as isolation. Usually this more pertains to, when you're starting to warm up, you want to get as much muscles moving as possible. waking up those muscles, getting blood flow, and then moving into the isolation exercises after, because that's when you can really focus on the muscles you want to build. So when you're looking to kind of shape your body, when people are saying, I want to lose fat here, I want this kind of shape, build phase is going to help you shape the body how you want it to look. And you can do that. You have the ability. So that's where the isolation exercises will come in. And of course, you're able to, again, really focus on the muscles you want to be working. This is where you're going to increase your weight. So that's why the foundation is so important with that form and technique, because now it's going to be a little more challenging to maintain that proper form and technique. And of course, the stability and core, because that's going to keep everything safe as you're adding weight, because you want to be safe as you're moving through these, proper rest between sets. So the muscle needs to basically retake that ATP. So ATP is our energy source. And when you're doing an exercise, you're going to spend some of that ATP. And now there's none left. So it takes some time. It takes about 60 seconds to kind of replenish so that you have the strength and the energy to continue to lift a heavy weight so you can get the most out of your workout. So we do want to take rest here. Usually around 60 seconds is kind of the sweet spot for this particular phase. High volume is actually really important. So in order to build the muscle, we actually have to make small tears in the muscle. And when we're doing contractions, when we're doing a bicep curl or anything like that, we're slightly tearing the muscle with every repetition with more heavier weight and higher reps. So when I say high volume, that's what I'm talking about high reps, high sets, and doing things like drop sets or supersets. A drop set is when you start with a heavy weight, you do as much as you can, you drop down right away, do as much as you can, you're kind of going to failure with each set. And that's usually 3 sets back to back. So you have a lot of reps in there, and then you take a long rest after. And then your superset is kind of going back to back with 2 exercises. So you're getting high volume. And then of course you want to take a little bit of a rest in between that. Daniel, did you want to add anything to the training component of a build phase?
So the first comment you made about like bulking, I mean, I hear that 100% of the time, and it's just so funny because it never ever fails. So that's a concern of people. Now, I usually divide this up into 2 categories. Like number one, if you're going to bulk, you know, male, female, just keep in mind, bulking is usually like, you know, females can definitely put some great muscle on their body, but I always hear from females, especially, like, I don't want to bulk, I don't want to become bulky, it's just going to make me become bulky. And I'm just like, the bulkiness comes from the amount of testosterone you have in your body, which is why most males can become bulky if they want to, and generally why it also takes females a little bit longer to put muscle on their body too, is it, you know, the amount of testosterone in their body versus a man's. And so you don't have to worry about bulking. Like, you don't have to worry about coming too big, too uncomfortable in your own skin. Don't worry about that. Focus on, again, just building that core, building that stability in your body. I love how you touched upon that, because I always say, I see a lot of people doing this and it's not their fault. It's just that they're not as educated about this piece. But if you're looking to bulk, the number one thing that you should do first is make sure that you are building a core foundation. And because without that, your body is not going to be balanced. Your body is not going to have that inner strength to properly bulk and really make that last. So I'm glad that you talked about like the build phase, 8 weeks, because it's funny. I do generally 8 to 12 week programs for this exact reason. When you're, and we haven't even touched upon the scale, not that I want to introduce the scale into this equation, but a lot of people will find as they're beginning something, like beginning with their training, beginning with their nutrition, that they'll jump on the scale. Then, you know, maybe like 3 or 4 weeks later, they'll jump on the scale again. They'll find out that it's increased. And I always say, you know, throw the scale out, because as you're putting muscle on your body, it's going to take a while to put that muscle on your body, and your skin's going to be tightening. All these changes are going to be happening, but your weight is going to increase. And that's actually a really good sign. I mean, if you're tracking as we talked about before, and you're doing proper workouts, building that core foundation, building that stability, like the scale is supposed to go up, quite honestly, at first. And you're putting muscle on your body. You're putting really good weight on your body. Muscle weighs something. Keep that in mind. It just takes up so much less space. And so my key things are just bulking. Don't worry about that, especially if you're a female. You're going to get strong. If you're looking to get really lean, you'll definitely get there too. If you're looking to just, improve your overall physique and get stronger, you're definitely going to get that. Definitely focus on core, definitely focus on that stability, definitely focus on overall just balance in your body. And the rest will actually be really easy to attain once those pieces are in place.
Absolutely. And that really ties into the nutrition aspect here is, so in order to build something, you need more of it. Think of anything. You build a house, you need materials. So the same thing when you're building muscle and repairing muscle, mind you, that's taking extra calories to do that work. So even if you're trying to stay lean while building, you still actually need a little bit of a surplus, if anything, a balance, but understanding that you're burning more calories with this type of workout, that you still need to increase your caloric intake regardless of the goal. And of course, if you are trying to build and bulk, then yes, you got it. You really want to get that extra calories. And I love that you talked about the weight, because that is always a big concern. And before I take my clients into that build phase, I always say, you're probably going to gain weight. That's actually what we want in this phase. So don't be alarmed by that. That's necessary. And then kind of reminding them that, if their goal is to kind of cut down and like shred or lean out, that it's going to be easier after when we get into the next phase. So you do need to increase your caloric intake. And this is where it, again, really depends on the goals. If you're looking to just build, you don't care about weight gain, by all means, cool. But we also want to make sure that you're eating good quality food. And this is where people get confused sometimes too. Like, oh, like I'm in a bulk phase, I'm building, I can, dirty meals and things like that. And, it doesn't mean you can go and eat donuts all the time, because then yes, you're going to gain fat. Absolutely. But depending on your goal, you might be able to be a little more flexible. If you wanted to do something like have a donut, you might be able to. But that ties into the last point. But in between there, I have the adequate protein and carb intake. So protein and carbs are pretty important in this phase. Not to worry, if you're keto, you can still build muscle. Just make sure to increase that protein. Our body will break down fats and proteins to give us the necessary things that carbs give us. So it is possible to be fully keto and still build muscle. I get that question a lot. But if you're not keto, then yes, this is a time where your carbs are going to be a little higher. Usually close to your workout is ideal, because that's when you need the repair. So I usually recommend, depending on what time of day my clients are training, usually after that workout is the best time to have that carb protein kind of meal. And then of course, the last point, this is where you can be a little more relaxed. So depending on your goal, you might be able to get away with some of the desserts you normally wouldn't eat, or, the extra things that you normally would be like, no, I can't have this. You can kind of, I hate saying this, but like treat yourself. I hate saying that because it's not necessarily depriving yourself of things either, but eating good quality nutrients is going to help give you the best results. But you don't have to stress and be like, oh my goodness, I can't eat this because it's just going to completely throw me off track for my goals. You can be a little more relaxed with the foods you're eating in this phase. I don't know if you want to add anything to that nutrition aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything, of course, that you're saying. The one thing I will always point out is, like, people hear the word like carbs and they're like, oh, carbs bad. Like, if I eat carbs, my weight is going to gain or increase. And I think people really need to understand what carbs do. And literally everything that you put into your body in some respect is a carb. Like, there's just a difference between good carbs and bad carbs. But like donuts, bad carb, also bad fat. But
yeah.
Fruits and veggies, like those are carbs too. But again, just keep in mind what putting good carbs into your system will do. Your body needs them. It converts them to energy. It helps replenish, glucose in your system, especially after a workout. And so sugar, energy, again, there's good sugars and there's bad sugars. Again, I'll go back to a donut, bad sugar. but fruit is generally a good sugar. It just depends on when you want to have that, when you want to deliver it for your results. And just, again, everyone's body is different. I mean, and I know people are going to hate me for saying this, but like some people naturally have a fast metabolism. It doesn't mean that internally, if they're just eating junk all the time, that they're healthy, even though they appear, kind of slimmer. But and then there's people who have maybe a slower metabolism, certainly, or have another medical reason why it's just tougher for them to, lose weight or get to their ideal weight and maintain that. But no matter what, these founding principles of what you need for nutrition, what you need as you're training, how you need to deliver calories into your body, that is going to roughly be the same. It's just everyone needs like a little bit modifications here and there, but the founding foods are going to be the same. So keep in mind, if you are working hard, like, and I always say like cheat day too. And some people get offended by that because they're like, I don't feel like I'm cheating myself. I just feel like, I'm living a balanced lifestyle and then I'm having something and I can afford to do that. And I agree with that. But we hear all these different terms, no matter what term you identify with. It's important to reward yourself. It's important to feel like when you are working hard that you should be able to have something that you enjoy. And trust me, you're not going to break your progress overnight. You probably won't even break your progress over the course of a week if you've been consistent for a little bit. And I think that's so crucial for people to remember. I have to tell myself that all the time whenever I, go away and I'm not as active as I usually am. I'm like, man, like I feel like I've lost, 2 months of progress. It's mental. 90% of this is 100% mental. So get in touch with your body, really just trust how you're feeling, trust what you're doing, follow the guidance of a coach like Nikki and I, and really just like hone in on what your goals are, keep them in mind, and then just kind of keep following these principles and you'll be fine. But I like to kind of go over an overview of that because people always say, oh, bad. I want to stay away from that. It's like, it's okay.
Yeah, 100%. It's all about balance and you want to enjoy life, but looking at your goals and like be realistic. Everything in moderation is okay. And I love that you said
Yeah.
that you're not overnight, like, and I've been guilty of this too. I'm just like, oh my goodness, I shouldn't have done that. And it's like, it's fine. It's not going to completely throw off everything. So I love that you said that. That's 100% bang on. Okay, so now we're getting into that conditioning cutting phase. And again, 4 to 8 weeks, but it really depends on the overall goal. Some of you know I've done like fitness competitions, and my cut phase is actually more like 12 to 16 weeks when I'm doing that. So it really is individual, but most phases, regardless, sorry, oh my goodness, regardless of your goal, is going to be anywhere from like 12 weeks, usually, something like that. Okay, so conditioning and cut phase, as I was saying a little bit earlier, it really depends on your goal. Some people aren't looking to lean out, but the conditioning phase to strengthen your heart is really important. Even if you're trying to just build and get huge, guess what has to feed those muscles? Your heart has to pump blood to get the nutrients to the muscle. Sorry. I'm gonna grab some water. Something's going on with my throat. So
This is what
regardless of
happens
your,
when you deliver all the information.
I know, right? I was worried this would happen. Anyways, so no matter what your goal, conditioning, cutting phase is important. And then of course, if you're trying to lean out, lose weight, tone up, whatever you want to call it, then yes, it would be a little bit more of a cut phase. And honestly, it really will more change from the nutrition aspect than it will from the training aspect. Some things might still change, and again, everything is so individual to each person. I love what you were saying with like males and females. Testosterone levels really change how the body responds to things. And as a female, I hate it, of course. And I know a lot of other females, we get real pissed off about this. But, guys lose weight so much easier. And that's why you have higher testosterone, more lean muscle. Therefore, your resting metabolic rate is naturally higher and you build muscle easier. So overall, you just burn more calories. That's just the science, and it sucks, but it is what it is. So we just have to figure out how to work with that. But I'm sure all of the other females out there will understand what I'm saying. It is challenging. So in training, of course, increasing cardio, because that's really the big thing here. We're trying to strengthen that heart. And this is a part that a lot of people are confused with, because, treadmill machines and heart rate trackers all say fat burning zones, and they think that that's where they need to be. But when we get into HIIT training, so high intensity interval training, where you're getting your heart rate up quite high and then recovering and then back up, that is going to help you burn calories for a longer period of time. What the fat burning phase means is that the nutrients it's using is primarily from fat. So to be in that zone of training, you don't really need as many carbs, and you can train your body to utilize fats for energy by training in that zone as well. There's a lot of science with this one, and it can get very confusing. So I try to keep it as simple as possible, but both are very helpful. Both are going to help you strengthen your heart and train the body how to use different energy systems. So fats, carbs, kind of simplify that a little bit. There's more to it, but simplifying fats and carbs is kind of what we mean when we say different energy systems. So when you're in this phase, usually a training will involve circuits and high repetitions to get the muscular endurance involved, so that your body gets better at basically turning over the nutrients to use it for fuel faster. So a lot of times with the circuit style is really just to keep the heart rate up. So the next point there, keeping up the heart rate. So doing interval training, basically just keep moving. A lot of times in my programs, people will have either circuits or active rest. And what I mean by active rest means instead of in between your sets with the resistance training, instead of just sitting there waiting, you're actually going to do something like skipping or mountain climbers or jumping jacks or something to keep the heart rate up, so your body can adapt at feeding the body by keeping that heart going. So the heart is going to get stronger and it will recover faster. And that's where things like interval training, when you first start doing high intensity, you need to rest for sometimes 2 minutes before your heart rate comes back down. As you continue training your cardio, your conditioning, that rest time will go down. And, I'll use an example of, 30 seconds all out on the treadmill and then a 30-second rest. When you get to a point where you can have a 1-to-1 work-rest ratio, that's really good. And that means your heart is now a lot stronger and it can keep up with the work you're doing. So this is really important. Again, I can't say it enough. From more of a health perspective, people really put this on the back burner and want to focus on, just burning fat or something like that. But the health component and preventing any kind of heart issues later down the road, this is so important. And it only becomes more difficult as we get older and our heart gets weaker. So by keeping it strong, you're going to really keep yourself healthy for a long time. So really, really important there. And then, of course, the big difference with trying to lean out in this phase is making sure you're getting appropriate amount of cardio. And by doing things like HIIT training, you are going to burn more calories for a longer period of time. It's something we call EPOC in the fitness industry. So when you hear that, it basically means you've worked really hard during that session and you're burning an elevated amount of calories. And when you're done working out, your body has to kind of play catch up. So it's going to continue to burn a lot of calories while your body is trying to balance back out to a resting state. So yes, you have your fat burning zones where you're more what we call steady state cardio. So you're at a intensity that you can hold for a long period of time, but it's still somewhat challenging, and that's going to allow the heart to adapt and get stronger at, pushing the oxygenated blood throughout the body. And then you have the HIIT training where you're going to get your heart to higher intensity so it becomes stronger, but also burn calories for a longer period of time. So big difference between the two, but they're both very important in the conditioning phase. Did you want to add anything to that, Daniel?
So I mean, everything you said again was strictly on point. I want to share kind of like a personal experience with this because, you know, just because you're a trainer doesn't mean you're always, doing the right things from the very beginning before you had all this knowledge. And the cardio aspect for me was something that I used to do a lot when I was younger by playing sports and playing soccer. And then when I started getting into strength training, I never really enjoyed running. Some people love it. I was never a runner. I mean, I ran for soccer and for warm-ups. I never really enjoyed it, but I used to say, like, whenever I hit the gym, oh, now it's up to me. I get to choose whether I do cardio or don't. I just didn't do it for a while. And because I didn't have to, or I felt like it was my choice. And let me tell you something, that significantly, it delayed my progress, but it also, like, without properly warming your body up, without properly, like, getting your heart, the proper cardio that it needs, and without getting your muscles to a good spot, like, just that heart rate portion is so critical to everything that you do on a daily basis, with exercise, with nutrition, with building, with leaning out. I mean, it's just like, it's one of those, like, basic things that kind of, no matter what you're doing, it's always going to be needed. And so the cardio portion for me, I tried to do it for a good period of time without cardio, and I ended up actually kind of having some minor injuries, and nothing that, like, prevented me from being, out of commission for a while, but certainly something that could have been avoided, and ultimately affected my balance in my own body. And then I became less stubborn and I started incorporating cardio again, and kind of within a week or overnight, it even felt like it made a world of difference. So, again, all elements of your fitness and nutrition are there for a reason. And just because, like, you're an adult and you feel like, oh, I get to decide what I do with this now, it's not being forced on me because of a sport, there's a reason why you did it. And sometimes it takes myself or some others a little bit longer to realize that, but that's why I'm here sharing my experience here today, is because I've been through this before. I've done the wrong things before, and I've done the right things, and I just choose the right things, and I choose to have all the phases together, so that every single day I can be kind of at my peak performance and my body can be balanced. But all the things that you went over are 100% on point, and if you don't use those, you are going to be missing something that you're working towards. So I just caution on that a lot.
Absolutely. Okay, so going into the nutrition aspect, again, this is where you're going to see the biggest change between people based on their goal. So if someone is getting into a conditioning cutting phase specifically to tone and lose weight, then you have to make sure you're in a calorie deficit. And this is something that you definitely want to be tracking and very mindful of, because you don't want to decrease too fast and really shock the body. Yes, you're going to see some fast results, but you're not likely going to be able to maintain that. And you want to make sure you're still getting the nutrients you need for your goals and just everyday life, to be totally honest. So looking at getting a little bit more fats, of course, in this phase, because like we were saying, you're going to potentially be in more of a fat burning phase. That's going to help train your body when you're decreasing the carbs and you're getting more fats. Once you've used your carbs, your body will have to change where it's getting that energy from. So by kind of transitioning the nutrition and the training combined, you can train your body to utilize fats more effectively. So that's usually in this phase as well. If you're not looking to necessarily lose weight or tone up, and you're doing this from more of the heart health perspective or feeding the muscles more effectively, then you don't necessarily need to be at a calorie deficit. But if you still want to be changing your caloric intake between phases so you don't plateau, because your body will always adapt. So at this, you want to kind of be more of a balanced state if you're not looking to lose weight here. Lots of water, because you're obviously going to be sweating a lot more in this phase. And one thing I always touch on here, which is the next point, is being aware of sodium. And this is very hit or miss with each individual. Some people are taking in too much sodium. And I would say it's probably safe to say most of the general population does. However, if you are sweating a lot and drinking a lot of water and not taking in enough sodium, that can actually be detrimental as well, because you need sodium for muscle contractions. Any type of exchange in the body, so even breathing, uses a little bit of sodium. Your heart beating, all of those things. So it is important to have sodium, which is natural in some foods. And of course, it's very high in most processed, already packaged, already prepared foods. So just so people are more aware, if someone is not taking in sodium, they actually want to maybe add sodium into their diet at this point. But that's very rare, but I do want to make sure that's out there so people are aware. And then, of course, if you are trying to keep your sodium down, you can be a little more forgiving here if you're doing a lot more sweating and training and drinking a lot of water, because you're flushing things out and it takes off that balance. But of course, if you take in too much sodium, drinking a lot of water will help you balance that out as well. And then, of course, as I was saying with the decreasing carbs, this is the phase you normally do decrease your carbs so that your body can utilize fats for energy. It forces your body to use fats for energy when it's depleted its carb source. And then if you're already in keto or anything like that, then this is usually an easier phase for you. But do you want to add anything to the nutrition aspect?
Sure. I mean, sodium is like such a big thing. I mean, sodium and sugar, the two things that you will basically find in almost everything that you eat, especially if it's canned or store bought instead of in the perimeter of a grocery store. And so being mindful of how much sodium, especially that you're taking in, being mindful of how much sugar you're taking in and how much water it's maintaining in your body, and then how much you're sweating out. I mean, a lot of people go through exercise without sort of that high intensity component to it, high intensity cardio or high intensity reps, and therefore they're not really sweating that much. And so that's a really big thing, is like be mindful of what you're doing for activities. And what I often say, like, when you sweat, you're sweating out toxins, you're sweating out necessary things that you then replace and, put back and nourish your body with. Salt and sodium is a big component of that. So if you're not sweating out that much and then you're putting more sodium back into your body, you're going to want to balance that out. And of course, if you are sweating out a lot, you're going to be sweating out, that sodium levels are going to drop. So you're going to want to replenish that, appropriately in your body. So it just being, again, everything that we're going for, being mindful of how all these pieces of the puzzle fit together, and just depending on your fitness level, depending on the stage that you're in and what you're going through, these are all going to be modified along the way. And just be mindful of, if you're in stage one, it's going to be different for what you're going to want to take in and excrete out versus stage 2 or stage 3. And knowing that will really help your body significantly and really help the way that you're feeling and your energy levels and your performance a lot too.
Absolutely. And that is a great tie-in to getting into the next couple phases. So your strength phase. I'm going to be super biased. This is one of my favorites.
Yep.
And I will say why. Because in a strength phase, you're using heavier weights to get more energy from less movement. And as a female, this is actually huge. I always say when I'm in a real strength phase, I actually lean out because I'm using so much more energy in a smaller period of time, basically. And I'm not doing it with cardio, I'm doing it with weight training. So I wanted to throw that out there, but of course it comes back to the nutrition and, calorie in, calorie out. That is still the math. So if you're not looking to lean out in a strength phase, don't worry. You just have to make sure you're getting the proper nutrients in. But tying in, so you're training in a strength phase. This is a little bit different. And again, going back to the foundation, it is so, so important here because you're dealing with much heavier weights. Having a spotter, and if you don't, making sure you're being safe with your movements and your exercises because you're likely doing a very challenging weight in order to see the true results from this. So definitely heavier weights, lower repetitions. You're trying to recruit more muscle fibers, which is that mind to muscle connection. So your brain telling the muscle what to do, it's getting better at doing that in this phase. And that's why people get stronger. They don't necessarily build muscle, they might, but they get stronger. They're able to lift more weight because the brain is more effective at telling the muscle what to do and is activating more muscle fibers in that one movement. So that is kind of how the whole strength works. Usually this is a shorter phase. It's very taxing on the body if you're doing it correctly, because it's not just your muscles that are getting tired, it's your brain. Your central nervous system is getting taxed. So going into the next point, you're going to potentially do more eccentric movements. What that means is the down phase. So let's say you're doing a push-up. When you push yourself up, that is the concentric. When you're coming down in a push-up, that's the eccentric. So because you're more actually resisting gravity and you're resisting a weight, you're likely to be able to actually do more weight. If you're resisting, it feels easier, but your muscles are still resisting and basically pushing against the same or more amount of weight. So it allows your brain to help the muscle recruit more muscle fibers so it can do more work. It can push heavier weight. So eccentric movements are really helpful when you don't have a spotter or anything like that, because you're likely releasing the weight or coming back through a movement, like a pull-up. I love training my clients that really want to do a pull-up. This is how we start. We get them on to the top of the bar and they slowly release themselves. Those same muscles are what are being used to pull yourself up. So by slowly releasing, those same muscles are going to get stronger. And then when you go to do a push-up, it's going to be like magic. Bam, you can do a pull-up. So that's a really, really great way to train in a strength phase to see significant increases in your strength is doing eccentric movements. Longer rest period, of course. So like I was saying, it's the brain that you're working here. The brain is telling the muscle what to do, and it is a lot more challenging than what it's used to. And the brain takes a little longer to recover than it takes the muscle to replenish ATP. So like we were talking about before, you need the ATP for the muscle. Well, we need that brain, the central nervous system. It can take up to 2 to 5 minutes for it to kind of replenish and reset, recharge to be able to do another rep. So if you're doing training like 1 rep max, like even up to like a 4 rep max, you're probably looking at about 2 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes of rest between your sets. If you're going more like a 4 to 8 reps, it's still working that strength component, but you might not need as much rest. Probably something like a minute and a half. A minute would be like the absolute least. And so now going into the rest days, this is actually a really important part of this phase. And I forgot to kind of touch that up in the build phase, but your body actually needs time to repair the muscle. So taking rest days is actually really important to see results. Where in a strength phase, it's the same idea. Like I said, the brain is very taxed, and you can't train a different body part like you can in a build phase because it's your brain that's tired. So when you're in a true strength phase, at most, you want to do 3 strength days a week. That is the most you want to do. And of course, you want to have those rest days in between. You can still do workouts on all of the days, but you want to make sure they're more active rest. So light movements. I will often do more skill days in this kind of phase. So if I'm trying to get my mobility to be better, I'm spending a bit more time with, an overhead squat with no weight. I'm just going through the movements. That kind of thing is what I mean by active rest. Going for a walk, or, if you're at the point where you're running on a regular basis, going for a light jog would be okay. So each individual, that active rest day might look different. But again, this is not a phase you can jump into. You have to make sure you go through that proper foundation. You have to make sure you're building the muscle to be strong and the stabilizers so that you're not getting injured in this phase. And then, of course, the conditioning, because your heart is also going to be taxed during this because it has to feed those muscles extra nutrients in less time. So if you've ever done like, a 1 to 3 rep max, when you're done that lift, your heart rate is like, it skyrockets. It actually goes up quite high. So you want to make sure it's safe from a heart health perspective to be able to do this phase as well. So strength phase is very different, but it's more advanced. You really have to make sure you're going through the other phases before you get into a true strength phase. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize kind of what you already said and think of it as like a mindset thing. But I mean, I'm going to relate to a lot of people out there, well-known people out there who, especially when you're lifting or doing heavier weights, I mean, such an emphasis on the importance of taking it slow, making sure you have your form intact. We always want to get that last rep or be like, I know I can do it. And then we don't realize that our form is just all out of place. And just to get that last rep, trust me when I say it's more crucial to have form in place and, do maybe one less rep than you would have been able to do with form out of place, because many bodybuilders, many, people who are hardcore with training have talked about this, where, injuries will just start popping up all over the place. And I'm in the United States, but I'm pretty sure this person is known worldwide at this point. But, Dwayne Johnson, we know how big he is. We know what his training is like. But he also talks about, if you've ever heard him talk about his training, he's also talked about like, how he's had injuries and how he's had to recover and all that stuff, because when you're training heavy, those things can happen much more easily and quickly to even the best of us. And so don't beat yourself up if it does happen. It's happened to me, right? Actually, right now I have a rotator injury and that I've been nursing, but sometimes you just have to be more mindful of, how your form is. And going to your push-up example, like this is a perfect way to describe like how when you're trying to reach a new goal, you're trying to try something new that you've never done before, oftentimes you take a look at like, how do I get from A to B, right? And the B just seems like so out of reach at that time. So like, I don't even know where to get started. So working backwards, like you were talking about, I mean, when you're climbing up a mountain, and I'm not even talking metaphorically, you're like, I climbed up, but I have no idea how to get back down. It's just like, start getting back down first, because then when you're at the bottom, I know exactly how to get back up. And then your mind it's just training the mindset. So sometimes starting backwards and then working your way up is the better approach and the better way to train your mind on how to actually accomplish that goal. And then you have a way different perspective on it, because you're like, I've already started from up. I know I can get there. I just have to, work my way back down again, then work my way back up. And I just think those two things are crucial points to make. And then, getting sleep, this is my favorite topic of all. And I'm talking as a parent right now at this recording of, I'm a parent to two boys. One is an infant. Trust me when I get that sleep is difficult. But it's also, I'm also going to say it is so important. So just make sure that everyone wants to, everyone has responsibilities. Life is crazy. We're all there. No matter what you do for an occupation, what you do for hobbies, every day is just crazier and crazier. Family, work, personal life, etc. Finding a balance at all. But sleep is so crucial. Metabolism, recovery, hormone levels, your mood, your energy, and how to actually, get to your goal in a healthy, safe manner. So sleep, really sums up all of that. Without sleep, your body can't do anything else of what we've even talked about so far in this presentation. So just want to put an emphasis on sleep. You may not get 8 hours every night. People might laugh at even getting 5, but power naps and just just taking mental health days. I mean, just allow your body to get some rest and recovery time. It's so crucial.
Absolutely. Biggest thing, because that's when your body repairs. That's when you're, resetting if it needs it. It's so important, and especially in this phase. And then kind of in the nutrition aspect, I know I put the sleep there, but same thing. Increase carbs on the heavy days and higher fats on the off days. So both carbs and fats are actually very important to kind of feed the brain. But again, your body utilizes carbs more easily. So when you're in a strength phase and you're doing, max output, you are going to definitely use those carbs very, very fast. What you would normally, I'm just going to throw kind of random numbers a little bit out there, but let's say, a normal workout, weight training, you maybe use 50 grams of carbs. In a true strength phase, when you're doing a lot heavier weight, you're probably going to be going up to maybe 100 grams of carbs in that same amount of time of a workout. So you will utilize a lot more carbs in this phase. So don't be afraid of the carbs in this phase for sure. And then the fats are really important to balance hormones, to, again, repair the brain as well. A lot of joints, lubricating the joints, cartilage, all of that thing uses fats too. So you need both, but you can definitely stick with the higher carbs in the training days when you're doing those really heavy workouts, those true strength days. And then again, the sleep, cannot say how important the sleep is in all phases, but in this phase, you're probably going to have the best sleeps of your life because your body needs it really bad.
that is so 100% true.
Yeah, I always say you're going to sleep so good in a strength phase. So good. All right. The last one here is power phase. So these are kind of interchangeable with the strength phase. I do notice that power phase is usually a little bit more sport specific in a lot of cases, because the difference with strength and power, strength is purely the weight, where power, we're incorporating speed and strength. So it's a combination of the two. A lot of times you will actually want to do a strength phase and then turn it into a power phase. And again, I put 4 to 6 weeks on this because for the average person, that is probably more what we're looking at. But if you're an athlete and you're training more sport specific, you will always have power components in your training, because that's where you're getting the speed, agility, a lot of plyometric movements, that heavy explosive movement. A lot of times with any kind of sport specific, this is where the performance level increases. So it might just kind of cycle through in terms of the exercises and what they look like, but you'll always have this incorporated in. along with the training and the whole periodization of if your sport kind of peaks at a certain time of year, or if it's more consistent, like a soccer player has a much longer season than a football player. So their training and how to get to that peak performance is a lot different between the two. Stability and deceleration exercises are really important, because when you're doing heavy explosive movements and you're moving from one spot to another very fast, you have much more risk of injury. So being able to have the stabilizers strong, so when you're landing and changing directions, you're less likely to get injured. Deceleration is kind of similar to what we were talking about in the strength phase with an eccentric movement. So if you're trying to jump on a box and you're trying to get to a higher level of that box, then jumping down from the box is actually the first step to train the body to absorb the impact to reduce injury. And that's a big part. I loved the mountain analogy. That's perfect analogy for this. And then longer rest between sets. This actually could change depending on, again, the goal and what you're training for. If you need to have more endurance in your sport, then you actually wouldn't have longer rests. But if you're doing more power and you're trying to get, longer jumps or more force, strength output, then you would want to have a longer rest period. So this is a pretty versatile stage. And in all honesty, aside from the foundation build and conditioning, all of the other phases are pretty versatile to change to your specific goals. But that kind of touches on why you would change it, and if you would want longer rests or things like that. Did you want to add anything to the training for a power phase?
I just I like the plyometrics. I mean, I think plyometrics is the exercises you can do at any time, and they're always great to keep in your regimen because of how they think of it this way. So plyometrics allows you, and this is what I love about them, they allow you to really isolate several muscle groups at one time. So when you're doing your workouts, like picture you just doing a bicep curl, right? I mean, that's targeting your biceps, which is fantastic, and you're definitely going to grow your biceps. But when I'm doing my training, and again, I'm talking a parent of two kids, so time is limited. And if you're in this category, like plyometrics is going to be one of your best friends for exercise, because it's going to allow you to get, isolate several muscle groups in one exercise, really target good overall body balance. And then so that when you're doing like a 30-minute workout, let's just say if you're even more limited to 20 minutes or 15, if you're doing quick plyometric workouts and focusing on stability and then just like a little bit of longer rest in between, these are going to be such good exercises you're going to find for your body to do. And again, if you're just working on a goal of getting stronger and just feeling better, at least for a foundational phase, plyometrics is essential to that. And I just love those types of exercises in general. They really help you isolate several different muscle groups at once, so you're maximizing the type of workout that you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always say you get the most bang for your buck with that. Yeah. In and out. Great quick workout almost always involves some kind of plyometrics, so 100%. Nutrition, again, we're going back to the sleep thing. Sleep is so important, because that's when you recover. Again, intaking more water, because you're doing a lot more work. Like I just said, more bang for your buck, but guess what? That means your body's doing a lot more work in that short period of time. So making sure you get a lot more water intake as well. And again, kind of what we were discussing earlier with the whole sodium, and if you're sweating more, you got to take more water in. So the plyometric phase, depending on how you're doing it, if you're doing more conditioning endurance, then you have less rest, you're likely sweating more. And then of course, when we're talking about athletes, the weather is going to play a big factor too. If it's hot and humid and you're going to sweat more, you're going to need more water. So water intake is pretty fluid with all the phases to really make sure you're getting enough and being aware of how much you're getting in. And again, this phase is so versatile to your specific goals that the nutrition is the same. It really depends if you're going for more of a performance base or aesthetic goals. So, someone that's doing a bodybuilding competition, they're going to have much different nutrient intake than, a professional athlete like a football player, where aesthetics is not part of it at all and does not matter whatsoever. So the nutrition really here is, the protein, again, like Daniel, you were saying from the very beginning, it's usually kind of underrated and people usually don't have enough. That is such a big part of the recovery. And then, the carbs and fats and calorie intake really comes down to the specific goal. So more aesthetic if you're looking to tone, cut, see more, shred phase, kind of whatever you want to call it, where you're trying to lose fat, then obviously you need to be at a little bit of a calorie deficit. And then performance, of course, it doesn't necessarily matter. You just want to get as much output as possible. Then of course you're going to need more calories, and you're not too worried about the weight or anything like that. But yeah, that's the power phase. I don't know if you want to add anything to the nutrition aspect there.
I just emphasize again on the water. I mean, we all need to stay hydrated, especially when we're exercising. But in addition to that, just think about what, putting in, what sweating does. So when you are sweating, like I talked about before, you are sweating out things from your body, and a lot of times you're sweating out toxins. And so when you hydrate, you're putting, not just hydration back into your system, but you're putting minerals and depending on, your water quality, depending on when you live, you might be putting, some other good stuff into your body at the same time. But the hydration part, just to understand why that's important. When you sweat, you're sweating out toxins, you're putting good stuff back into your body to help keep that balance, and then it just keeps cycling through. And so, your body is made of, the majority of your body is made of water. So might as well hydrate it. And for aesthetics purposes, I mean, outside of the shredding and whatnot, I mean, your skin, your glow, if you will, just your complexion in general is going to be much better with not only good nutrition, but with that hydration. When you're allowed your body to stay hydrated, it really, moisturizes the skin, helps your complexion, gives that glow effect, and so on. So, just emphasizing the aesthetics purpose of that too.
Absolutely. All right. So that pretty much covers the different phases. Do we have any questions? We want to open the floor.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. If there are any Q&A right now, I turned off my camera for the last part of that just because my internet said it was unstable, so I didn't want to drop out. But yeah, if anyone does have any questions, and of course, when we post this video, we highly encourage people to ask questions there, and whatever's out there. I mean, there's no bad question. Trust me, I've been here for long enough, and whether it's a very basic one or more advanced one, there's no bad questions.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up. Again, we're going to have this recording available. Questions come up later. You can always reach out to either one of us. Facebook, Instagram, we're both on there. Yeah, I mean, thanks so much. And again, any question you have, someone else is probably thinking it too. So
yep. No matter what, people are definitely thinking it. And again, this, Nikki, I don't know if on your end, but we're hoping that this might be the first of more to come. And I just appreciate you having me on for the first one here.
Absolutely. I loved having you. Thank you so much for coming out. And yes, this is the first of many more. I have a few requests of different topics, and I'm really excited to keep them going. And of course, Daniel, I would love to have you on for others. So thanks so much for coming out, and thank you everyone that joined. And this will be available.